Here we are, we're back. This is North Jersey Living. I'm Ross Hyman. My partner Greg Nicholas and we are real estate agents in Northern New Jersey, and we help people just like you sell their homes and move to Northern New Jersey. Specifically, our office is located in Montclair, New Jersey. We're going to tell you all that we can about towns in the area and housing in the area, the costs of homes, some of the pros and cons, and things of that sort. Now, if you like this sort of video and you want more content like this, feel free to like and or subscribe. And if you'd like to reach us to have some help either selling your home or finding a home in the North Jersey area, our contact information is below. Please feel free to call us, text us, email us, or use the Calendly link to schedule a meeting with us, a video conference. So that being said, I'm going to jump right into the content of this video and tell you what this is about. This is a Little Falls, New Jersey pros and cons. So I'm going to take you through 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Little Falls, New Jersey. Little Falls is a town that has become more popular recently. It's, if you search on YouTube, if you search on Google, it's one of the more popular searches for towns in the area. Jumping right in, pro number 1 for Little Falls, New Jersey. It is widely considered one of the best towns to live in all of New Jersey. Some websites like niche.com and bestplaces.net rank it very highly. I've seen it as high as the number 2 best town to live in North Jersey, or New Jersey, but it is in North Jersey. So what are some of the reasons for that? We're going to go into other pros, so we're going to be, I might be a little redundant here, but Little Falls is a small town. It is about 17 miles west of New York City, maybe a little less. Actually, I think it's about 12 to 15 miles because Montclair is right next to it, and Montclair is 12 miles. I guess it depends on whether you drive or whether you fly. The bottom line is that it is a town that's very close to New York City. It is a historic town. It is a quiet town. Some people call it a sleepy town, but it's got most of what you need, most of what you want in a place to live, to raise a family, to have a home, and build a nice life for yourself. So it is highly rated among websites and surveys. People who review the town that live there have a lot of good things to say about it. I rarely see negative things. We'll cover a few cons though, nonetheless, because there's always things that you can find. But it's one of those small towns that you would say looks like it belongs in Middle America. It's got the car dealership. It's got the small little village area. It's got parades and picnics and things of that sort. So it's very much visually a traditional American town. So that's one of the pros that I think is most recognized about Little Falls. The second pro that I want to cover is the housing costs. Look, if you're not from New Jersey and you're not used to the cost of housing here, you think calling it low cost of housing is absurd because it's still $500,000 is the median home price here. But it's relative. I mean, that's about 20% less than the average for the towns around the area. So the surrounding towns, it's about 20% less to live in Little Falls, and that's the median. So about $500,000, about $500,000. Now that number has been probably driven down a little bit by the fact that there's some new construction in the area, and that new construction is usually, lately it's been condos and townhomes, which are lower priced homes. You know, you've got that as a reason for the median price being a little lower. Also, some of the houses in Little Falls are smaller. They have a lot of Cape Cods. They've got a lot of small colonials. It's not a place where you're going to see a lot of, 7-bedroom houses or mega mansions or things like that. It's a lot of small, cozy homes with a nice yard. You've got some green space and some trees, and it's really nice. But it's very, I guess you could say, I don't want to use the word average, but it's the kind of thing you'd picture when you imagine yourself buying your first home or even settling in and building a family in a small town. So it has that kind of a feel. So the housing costs are somewhat lower. And again, if you're from another part of the country and you say, well, I can get a house here for $300,000, sure, you can, but you're also not going to be right next to New York City, where the housing cost is going to be 10 times what it is in your town. It's relative, but it is an advantage for Little Falls, and it's one of the reasons why many people look at it as a place to live when they're looking for a new home, when they're looking to move, simply because if they're looking at surrounding towns like Montclair and Glen Ridge and other towns in the area, even Wayne, the houses are going to cost more. So it's a reasonable price for the area. The third pro is that Little Falls has very good schools. According to niche.com, according to a bunch of websites, it has a U.S. Department of Education Blue Ribbon Award. It's got a U.S. News and World Report Award, and it's one of those school districts. It's small, but they put a lot of energy into the education. One of the great things that they also have a school for kids with autism with special needs, which is, not something you'll find in most towns around the U.S. It specializes in that. So it's a small school district. You get a lot from it. There are 3 schools, charmingly named School 1, Number 1, Number 2, and Number 3. And the way that the schools are broken down is that it's actually not in order how you'd think, but School 3 is the one that is K to 2. School 1 is 2 to 4, and School 2 is 5 to 8. And then for high school, they go to a regional high school that's shared. It's Passaic Valley Regional High School, which is shared by several towns in the area. So Little Falls itself has the 3 schools. Once you get through 8th grade, you're then going to the regional high school, which is also well regarded. Pro number 4, and this is a big one in the area. There are tons of activity and recreational choices, and the town spends a lot of time and money making it fun, engaging the community. They have an amazing athletic and rec center. It's called the Little Falls Sports and Recreational Complex. Here's some of the activities and recreation you can look for in the area. The Morris Canal Greenway. It's a historic landmark, but it's also a waterway that runs all the way from eastern Pennsylvania to the Hudson River. Essentially, there's also places where it opens up into the Newark River. I think it's called the Newark River Basin. It was started in 1825. It was started being functional in 1829, and then it was in service, I think, until 1926 or 1924. I think that's the right date. The purpose of this canal was a man-made canal that ran all the way across the state, and the purpose was to move anthracite coal from eastern Pennsylvania. So back in the early 1800s, what was going on is people were using wood. They were cutting down the trees in their neighborhoods and in the surrounding areas for heat and for cooking. And they had cut down so many trees in New Jersey that they needed to bring in an alternative fuel source. Back in the early 1800s, there was no oil combustion engines. It was wood or coal. Coal became one of the predominant energy sources, the sources for heat and for cooking. And the canal was the way that they got the coal all the way across the state. Also, it's interesting to know when you talk about the canal, they can only allow a ship, I think, or boats that were, 8 or 10 feet wide. They could be as long as 87 feet, but they couldn't be that wide because they didn't build this thing like a river. It's truly a canal. Now, the reason I bring up the canal is not because you get to take a boat ride, because lots of it is dismantled. You can't really do anything. You can't do much on the water, if anything at all. It's more of a spillway at this point. But there are waterfalls, there are scenic areas along it, and that's where their fun comes in, because they're landmarks in itself. The waterfall that I have in another video that you can see I think it's in the Little Falls vlog. But if you want to take a look at that, you can see I start that video at the waterfall, which is in front of a mill, which was the center of the town. It was a carpet mill at the time. Nonetheless, they took parts of that canal and they created green space along it and what they call the Morris Canal Greenway. The Morris Canal Greenway is essentially walking and running and biking trails. In Little Falls itself, there's a small piece of it. It's about 0.8 of a mile, and so 0.8 of a mile, and then that's paved, and then there's another 0.8 of a mile that is dirt, so you can ride mountain bike on that. You can ride off-road. That is one of the reasons people like living in Little Falls, and one of the pros of being there. There's also a park called the Wilmore Park, where they have small concerts. There are events like 4th of July events in the town and in the park. They have picnics and so forth. They have a farmer's market every Sunday. It's truly small town charm. I mentioned earlier the Little Falls Sports and Recreation Complex, and the reason I'm bringing that up again is because there's tons of things for kids to do, even adults. They have clinics and leagues from ages kindergarten through adult, and they do that for soccer. They do it for basketball, field hockey, and there's also, of course, baseball fields in the town and so forth, but I know specifically they have clinics and leagues for those sports. The public library, of all places, is also a gathering point in this town. It's a very big attraction because they do stuff for seniors, they do stuff for kids, they do stuff for everyone, and they have some really fun things, such as they have evening story time at the library. I love this because libraries have become obsolete in a lot of towns now that the internet is so popular. They kept the attention of the people who live in this town focused on the library by bringing in all these activities. And I think that is an amazing thing that all towns should do so that they can keep their libraries alive and create a gathering space for the people in those towns. So they have evening story time. They have game nights where they play Dungeons and Dragons, Rummy Cub. They even have a drive-in bingo night where you can literally come with your family in your car and drive up and play from your car. Where else do you see that? I don't know that this is just for seniors, but they do free strength and balance classes at the library to help people work on their strength and balance. And their weekly classes, I believe it's every Wednesday. So really charming stuff, small town stuff, but just outside of New York City. Moving to the fifth pro, which is that, of course, I've mentioned New York City a few times, but Little Falls is a New York City commuter town that is valuable to people who move here, who need to be closer to the city for work or for even entertainment. If you like Broadway shows, if you like going to fine restaurants, New York City is basically a 45 to 55 minute train ride away. There are also direct trains that run that might get there faster. And of course, you don't know exactly how long it's going to take if there's issues on the train line, but there are times when you can get to New York City in 25 minutes, especially that direct train that runs from the Montclair State University station, which I didn't mention in the school section, but Montclair State University, which is one of the top rated state schools in New Jersey, is also it's in Little Falls, and it's partly in Little Falls and partly in Montclair. A lot of it falls into the Little Falls township. That school has its own train station, or the town has its own train station at the school, which also has parking. They have a huge parking deck, so it's one of the few places in the area that you can find parking just about any time for taking a train to New York. So it's always a good choice if you want to go into Manhattan and you need to leave your car. The Montclair State University train station is great. But Little Falls has its own train station as well. They have trains that run on the hour, or not on the hour, but every hour, Monday through Friday, going to and from Manhattan. And then there are 2 buses that run to New York City. So you have that as an option as well. Of course, there's also the obvious, which is all the roads that we have in the area, the Garden State Parkway, I-78, Route 3, I-78 and Route 3 both go into New York City. You've got Route 46 that goes east-west, connects to Route 3, that can get you into the city as well. But you've got all these options for getting into the city. You could even take a taxi into the city. I looked up what was the fastest way to get into the city right before I started this recording, and believe it or not, a taxi, it said, would take 22 minutes to get into the city. How's that for fast? There are a number of options for travel, but also if you're a commuter into New York City, this is a great place to live. It's a great place to find a home that's reasonably priced and still be able to earn a Manhattan salary, which is higher than a lot of parts of the country. First con to living in Little Falls, it is not quite as walkable as some towns in the area. Now, I mentioned the Morris Canal Greenway. That is obviously that's intended for walking or bike riding. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about like a downtown area where you can walk for an hour, or streets that you can do a nightly walk if you want to do that for exercise. You can do it, but the downtown is a very small village area and it's a busy road. Generally speaking, it takes time to get around. You need a car or a bike or something to get around a lot of the town, or to get in and out of Little Falls. Again, I see people walking, but I live in Montclair. Montclair is an extremely walkable town. There's several village areas, downtown and uptown and so forth, and areas where you can walk around where there's, just quiet streets where there's not a lot of traffic. So Little Falls has that. It's just not quite as walkable. People will tell you that in the area. It's not quite as walkable as towns like Montclair or Bloomfield or Glenridge. So that is one of the cons. The second con, I think this is an important one to keep note of, is that there's low home inventory. The town itself is only 2.8 miles square. It's not a square, but about 2.8 miles by 2.8 miles. Back in July of 2021, there was this is for reference, there was 66 homes for sale. I believe right now there are 6. The home inventory has dropped dramatically. A lot of that has to do with the housing market in general, but also it has to do with the fact that they did a lot of building, and a lot of those were new housing units back in 21, 22, and so forth. Those houses have been sold, and people just aren't selling them right now because they don't want to try and look for something as affordable as what they got at the time. So the home inventory is a challenge. So if you are looking to move to Little Falls, feel free to reach out to myself, to Greg. We can try and help find you something. And, we can also look in surrounding towns. That's generally, people don't just look in one town like Little Falls, which has a population of 14,000. But generally, you're going to look in the area and look at a bunch of different towns. Little Falls is one of them that people often are interested in. Another con, taxes. Taxes in North Jersey are extremely high to begin with. So Little Falls is not immune to that. It doesn't mean that you can't get a reasonable deal on taxes when you buy a home in Little Falls. You'll probably pay less than you would in surrounding towns, but it's because you're probably paying less for the house. Or you might have less land, especially if you're buying a townhome or condo. That would help offset the general high cost of taxes in northern New Jersey. Taxes are a challenge in New Jersey to begin with. One of the reasons, just if you're not familiar, one of the reasons that taxes are so high in New Jersey is because there's hundreds of municipalities. So I mentioned that Little Falls is this small 2.8 square mile town. There are hundreds of towns like that in New Jersey, and each of them has its own services. Some of them don't, but a lot of them have their own services, meaning police, fire, schools. Little Falls does have a dedicated fire and police department. So you've got a situation where a group of 14,000 people and businesses are essentially paying to have full-time fire and police. It's something that gives people comfort, but there's a cost to it, and that's what comes out in the taxes. Also, I mentioned the 3 schools. You're paying for the schools. So those are the things that your taxes go towards. Generally speaking, in New Jersey, most of the tax money goes to schools anyway. I think 40 to 50% of it typically goes to schools. You're not going to avoid that anywhere, just about anywhere in New Jersey, at least not northern New Jersey. Con number 5. Flooding. The Mars Canal is a waterway. There is the Passaic River as well. Little Falls has, it has some hills. Everything in this area is essentially part of the Watchung Mountain, I believe it is, the whole area, but there are low points to it. Little Falls is one of those lower points. And so there are houses in Little Falls and areas in Little Falls that are subject to flooding. It's not everywhere, it's not all the time, but when you are buying a house, you have to look for that. You have to keep an eye out, talk to your realtor, find out if there's a FEMA flood map. On the FEMA flood map, is this house located on the FEMA flood map, and at what level, and do you need flood insurance? So that is something you need to consider anywhere in North Jersey, but Little Falls is particularly sensitive to that. So flooding can be an issue. Just keep in mind that it doesn't mean that you're going to get a flood every 10 years. I mean, a lot of these flood ratings are a 100-year flood rating. So once every 100 years, you might have a flood event. And it doesn't mean you're going to lose your house. It could mean that you have 2 inches of water in your basement. So take it, with a grain of salt, but also do your research. Talk to the people in the town. Have your realtor help you to find out all the relevant information before you make an offer on a property. And just be careful. Just note in the back of your head that you need to make sure that you think about that if you buy in this area or rent that you can rent in this area. 5th con, overbuilding. So I mentioned that there's some new townhomes and condos that are being built. That's most of the new construction in Little Falls. In fact, I rarely see anything but these new developments going up. And it's great because it's needed. Housing is needed. And there isn't a lot of new homes that are being built in northern New Jersey generally. But what you're having is an area that used to have a few houses on it now has 30 units or something more dense than that. They go from something that was 2.5 stories to something that's 4 stories high and has parking lots and has a lot more people, and consequently you get a lot more traffic, a density of people, cars coming out during rush hour. It's just you'd have that anywhere if you had a building going on and you have these new, bigger, denser buildings going up. Also, you have the construction while it's going on. At this very moment, a lot of the major construction has finished. So I'm trying to think of there's still a few buildings that are under construction, but I don't think there's any major roads closed, but that is part of progress, and it's needed, especially in northern New Jersey, because there's not enough housing for the people that are in need of housing. So overbuilding is another piece of this that you need to consider. That's a con. Just summing it all up, Little Falls is a fantastic town, a fantastic place to raise a family, to buy a home, to enjoy everything that you would expect from living in a small town. I hope you take a look at it yourself. If you like this area and you want to know more about it, Greg, Nicholas, or myself would be happy to tell you more about it. We'd be happy to take you on a tour of the area, and you can find our contact information below, or you can like and subscribe to see more videos like this. We would love to help you. We help people like you every day to do just this, to move to this area or to list and sell homes in this area. That is what we do, and we'd love to see you. So thanks for watching and hope to see you again.